Hello, welcome to Loremaster's Lair. I'm your Loremaster, here to continue our month-long look at orcs and their society. Today, the Society. The largest collection of orcs in Avestan. We might mention other places in a more distant future, but the nation that actually started my research for this month, the notorious Hold of Belkzen. No hesitation. Time to proceed. Let's start by looking at the origin of the hold, which is great because I recently did dwarves, so we know most of it already. Torre called his dwarves to climb to the surface. Orcs were there in the way. Dwarves committed genocide. Orcs were eventually pushed from the home and onto the unforgiving surface against their will. Might sound harsh on dwarves, but to ignore history is to set up for it to repeat. Something which is unfortunately topical. Either way, on the surface during the Age of Darkness, orcs managed to do pretty well against the humans, until their enemies the dwarves finally funded up behind them. Old hatreds returned, war started, and the dwarves built their sky citadels, one of them being Kaldorka is probably how it's pronounced. Anyway, these citadels stood tall for many centuries, until the legendary orc leader named Belkzen united the tribes and conquered the city during the Battle of Nine Stones, renaming the citadel Orgir, and soon the surrounding region, which became home to these orcish tribes, became the Hold of Belkzen. The Hold of Belkzen has no central government. Orcs travel in tribes, and each make their own territory. Some have large territories, even cities, while others have little to nothing. I believe the best way to go about the tribes is to highlight them as we go through the regions. So let's put a pin on the actual tribes for now. The Hold of Belkzen runs on the seasons. From fall to spring is what is known as the time of proving. This is a time known for constant war. Different tribes war with each other, mostly to prove their superiority, as well as spread out, to conquer more land and take food and other supplies from other creatures. Specifically the Shouty people, the nation of Uslov, and what was once Lastwall. And when not fighting, they are hunting, or making weapons, or improving their defenses. Basically, 9 months of war. However, at the end of spring, melt from the nearby mountains creates flash flooding across the region, specifically turning the flood road, which splits the country from a dry path into a river. Orcs call this time the Flood Truce, and use a prohibition against fighting to hunt animals from the realm of mammoth lords and to find mates. It is considered weak to marry within one's own tribe, and considering the otherwise constant fighting, this is their one chance to find anyone. However, the flood also heralds our first side tangent of the day, the part of the show where we show a different face of gods. Last week I talked about the Orc gods. I do not have a plan to talk about them this week since I will be going into Orcs themselves next week, but even with the deity dry spell, a group from Divine Anthology brings us back. Not a book, a group, because the flood prophets are not much for written text. Usually, the god Ro, the Thunderer, is respected for his power over thunder and lightning. However, the flood prophets instead focus on both the clouds, which block the sun to protect the light-sensitive orcs, and the floods, which bring new life to the region. During the Flood Truce, the prophets, including the tribe called the Storm Screamers, conduct ceremonies most orcs kind of just ignore. Then, when the time of proving comes again, the prophets return to the mountains until the next spring thaw. Really, looking at Roll, both the canonical faith and this Apocrypha, he's not that bad of a guy for someone labeled chaotic evil. Either way, Belkzen is unofficially divided into several regions. To start, we have the capital city, Urgir. As mentioned before, the city once was a dwarven sky citadel, and it still is, kind of. I was going to say mostly intact, but who all knows that orcs do not do anything to maintain it. The original building was set up as 8 layers, each dedicated to one of the dwarven gods, but now top 4 levels are in such disrepair that it seems they could collapse at any moment. Of the inhabitable floors, the bottom floor, once dedicated to Turag, is a central market, and where most non-orcs in the city can be found. The second level, once dedicated to Folgrit, still stands as the main residential area. The third, once dedicated to Angrad, was once a place of many forges, but orcs do not really need those, so it now houses mercenaries. And the fourth, once dedicated to Gundinar, once a place for diplomacy, now houses a war academy and war alchemists. The former leader of the city was Uldeth, chief of the Empty Hand tribe, who realized that if he did not create reforms, then one day his people would be on the back foot against the ever-advancing civilized countries. He created policies which promoted other ancestries to come to the city, and to allow trade through the entire country. Even though he was slain in 4716 AR, his chief commander and leader of the Closed Fist police force, Andrax's right hair, has continued the reforms, even refusing the advances of the newly returned Whispering Tyrant. Outside of the Empty Hand, Death's Head is one of the oldest orc tribes, given permission to control the lands around Urgir. The next region is Winterfall. As mentioned before, the whole is divided down the center by the before-mentioned Flood Road, and Winterfall takes up most of the east. Whereas the land technically includes Urgir, what makes this land stand out are the parts that are not controlled by orcs. The largest permanent city is Freedom Town, founded by outlaws from surrounding nations and with agreements to tribute to the Empty Hand tribe. The city of outcasts the city is one for outcasts who are wanting to last place to escape the laws that has not only flourished, but is a stop upon the slowly growing trade route to Urgir. Further north, along the flood roads, stands Covenant Rock. This checkpoint, established by the mating pair of red dragons, Shelbliss and Tycholis, is a necessary stop for anyone wishing to travel north of that point. The two were once known for raining destruction across the land, but the pair are currently preoccupied with their eggs, and have therefore set up a system of tribute to allow people to travel into their territory, leading to less need for murder. The mountains where the dragons call home also are home to two groups of anti-orc forces. The Firewatch Peak, which houses soldiers from Ustalov, and Godom, home of a dwarven reliquary, and house to dwarves who never left that far from their old home. However, there are still orc tribes here, including the rivals of the Blood Trail and Skull Eater tribe, who hold opposite ends of a major pass. The Open Borough, who are known for their necromantic practices, and the Defiled Corpse tribe, the Chosen of Zalgresh, and guardians of an ancient monument found in the region, the Cenotaph. Oh, what's this? An ancient, mysterious building? Hello, side tangent number 2. Cenograph was built during the days of Tasnonia by the Rune Lord of Gluttony, with Gluttony being the necromancers. When news of the approaching Winterfall came to the Rune Lords, many made their rune walls, but he was kind of undead, so he had more options. So he made the Black Tower out of Nokril, specifically in this spot because it's connected to natural portals to a negative energy plane. He split his spellbook phylactery into 3 pieces to be reunited after the incident had passed, and he buried himself in the basement of the tower. This tower is suffused with negative energy and attracts various undead. There are also rumors that this is where the Whispering Tyrant first obtained his mystic powers. Regardless of true or not, he did use it as a base during the Shining Crusade, and a large army of undead still currently wait inside. Before we go west, let us look south to the most recent acquisitions of the Hold of Belkzen, the Conquered Lands, stretching from Valafo to Castle Eversand, from the Esk River to the Kestrel River. This land was once part of Lastfall 200 years ago, before being conquered by the Orcish monsters. It is made of fertile land which the people of Lastfall feared the Orcs would settle upon. However, they did not understand Orc culture. Well, Belkzen Orc culture. Again, next week. Anyway, farming is not something Orcs do. Therefore, the most fertile lands of Belkzen remain uninhabited, only serving as staging grounds to attack south, to then be abandoned during the Flood truce. That said, 2 towns do stand in the area. Trunau, a city which has been able to hold off Orcs for the past 200 years, and Krignaroth, home of the giants in this area who were displaced by the Orcs. Local tribes include the Skittering Ravagers, a tribe which has most recently become undead-ish thanks to a necromantic trap, and the Bloody Gauntlet, worshippers of Gorm, led by a half-orc whose brother just happens to be among the Knights of Lastfall. He also worships Gorm, so it is more fun than personal when the battles break out between the 2 sides. Swooping back northward, half of the west side of the Flood Road is the Blood Plains. This is the front Belkzen has with Vorician, and the home of a continuous struggle for land with Shouty. It was also once home to the tyrant Kazavon, but that is not the topic. Today, the largest city is Glistelwell, a mine fought over by the Haskador and One-Eyed tribes. However, the true landmark is the Foundry, the home of the Steel Eater tribe, a tribe which spends their days building weapons instead of warring, and who are known to be able to defend themselves if anyone tries to test their weapons. Here, if one looks hard enough, they can find the Sleeper, the lost city of Zin-Gastash, which was once part of Tassalon, specifically as the capital of Gluttony. And if one were to look a little less hard, they'd be able to find Skullwall, a Gothic temple, which was once home to the before-mentioned Kazavon. Again, we're not dealing with him today. But what is today, speaking of Skullwall, is our third side tangent, the Star Towers. These massive structures were created by Don Graal, a deity who would one day become the creature known as Zon Kuthon. When the gods sealed away Rovagug, it was Dobral who used his powers to pull the planet back together, before using massive towers to suture the wound. He then placed the towers across Galarian, having them constantly pump magic into the prison to ensure Rovagug never escapes. Even corrupted, Zon-Kuthon retains the towers, though their guardians and their effects on the surroundings have become slightly darker. And as towers have fallen over the years, Rovagug has grown stronger. It is only a matter of time before the creature is freed, if the towers are not maintained. Which we know the locations of 3 which are still standing. 1 in the Dal, 1 created darkness known as the Veil of Shadows at the base of Five Kings Mountain, and 1 currently as part of Skullwall. Further north, we have Smokespur, a place where many mysteries of Belkzen hides. It still has its cities, including Deep Gate, the location where a majority of the orcs of this region emerged from, the Darklands originally, and Rivensting, the second largest city in the Hold. Some mysterious natural phenomena in the region include the Dirt Sea, a region made mostly of grasslands which some tribes travel by skiffs, and the Eldred Wastes, the border to the realm of the Mammoth Lords, an area where many megafauna cross through. Less natural locations include the Pillars of Krith, 11 still standing pillars covered in strange writing, some speculate to be a planetary gate, and Broken Shore, a region of ancient battle which is still haunted by Eidolons of various god-callers, as well as a Psychopomp left to protect this region by the Psychopomp usher Vanimos. For tribes of this region, we have the Mother Child tribe and the Ring Ripper tribe, who are both in charge of Rivensting, the Deadeye tribe, who worships the mysterious Bromosh, the Drowning Sand tribe, who monopolizes travel across the Dirt Sea, and the Ice Tooth tribe, who spends much of their time hunting to the north. For non-orcs in this region, the Order of the Honored Dead, a band assembled to destroy orcs, also makes a camp here. Which, taking a step back, this is my chance to use Psychopomp ushers as a side tangent. So let's go. Psychopomps are neutral outsiders, tasked by Pharasma to assist with the dead. This can be collecting souls, guiding those who are lost, soothing the fears of the dead, and the grief of the living, etc. The strongest of these are ushers. They have many duties. Some, like Balzac, serve purposes of assisting other Psychopomps to make their overall job easier. Some, like Selok, have to argue where a final soul should rest. However, a majority of them stand as judges, overseeing a portion of the cases which come through. After all, Pharasma may judge all the souls, but she cannot judge all the souls. I would also like to go through the list we have of them, but there are 15. One that I feel covering in a side tangent. I may need to devote a video to outside of demigods or something in the future. Either way, this taste was good enough. So next up, let's talk about the residents of Belkzen. Well, actually, I believe I'll be doing plenty of that next week. So let's put a pin in it here. Next week, I'll return to talk about the orcs themselves, and give a more thorough examination of the plenty contradictory sources. I am personally looking forward to it, more than any other ancestry video I am planning on doing. But either way, that is something for the future. I hope all of you take the time to come.